Texas whiskey is super diverse, and Nico wrote an article about it. Like to hear it? Here it goes. Stay tuned. Welcome to Texas Whiskey. My name is Jimmy Hayes Nelson. People just call me Coach Jimmy, and I'm here as always with the doctor, Dr. Nico Martini. What's up, man?
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
Today we're talking about how diverse Texas whiskey is, and we kind of have a huge collection here. So why don't we pick one of these, you pour it, tell us a little bit about it, and we'll start this chat.
So I'm about to pour you.
Ooh, the small bottle.
Some of the most rare Texas whiskey there is.
Which is, if we're talking about the diversity,
Yes.
diversity, is that the word? We're going to start with the rarest, or one of the rarest.
So this is Banner.
Okay.
This is Banner Distilling. This is a wheat whiskey.
Wheat.
They are, where are they? They're in Manor, which
Where
is
is that?
which is east of Austin.
Okay.
They've been around for 10 years.
Wow.
All of their bottles, first and foremost, all their bottles are $3.75. So
They're awesome looking.
you've
Just
got
to the
little-
eye, that's a kick-ass looking bottle.
Yeah. So you've got like a little half bottle.
Yeah.
They've only made about 1,500 of them
But they've been around 10 years.
in 10 years.
Wow.
And so like literally, it was Logan Simpson and Tony Jimenez, and they are the ultimate DIY distilling story. They literally went to Google. They found they got a keg, and they got a bunch of plumbing supplies, and they built their own still. And they decided they wanted to actually, make some whiskey.
You really can learn everything on YouTube.
It's ridiculous. So like, I mean, it helps that one of them has a doctorate in chemistry and the other one's an electrical engineer. But that being said, they literally built their own still and they started a distillery from scratch. And so
10 years ago.
Yeah, this is
That's cool.
Yeah,
'Cause
isn't that
again,
awesome?
every time I think, okay, I've heard all of them so far. No, there's another story.
See,
it's a great color.
And you kept like wanting me to tell you who I was talking about because I was kind of running these stats through my head before we started the show.
Yes, and I'm glad you didn't know.
I was like, no, man, it's a surprise.
No,
Like,
it is a
Like,
surprise.
you gotta go with this. Like, dude, Banner Distilling. If you like wheat whiskey, I think that you will thoroughly enjoy this. You kind of have to go there to have the experience.
Right. And we talked about wheat whiskey 2 weeks ago.
Yes, with Brandon.
Brandon from Lone Elm. And so if you go back and watch that episode, Brandon from Lone Elm talked specifically about wheat whiskey. So here's another wheat whiskey, Banner Distilling.
So yeah, the color is spectacular. What do you think? What do you get on the nose?
It's milder than a lot of things that we.
It's not bourbon.
Yeah. Okay. Great point.
Wheat whiskey is going to be a lot more chill
Okay.
than bourbon ever will be.
Nice.
Just because of the roughness of corn.
Awesome. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers, man. I love this whiskey. So hard to get.
That's
right.
That's easy drinking
I
right
know.
there. Awesome.
I know. Like it's crazy. And so this is. We were discussing what we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of a 4-article series for American Whiskey Magazine.
Hold it up.
Okay.
Show the people.
This American Whiskey Magazine. You should subscribe at least to the next 4 editions. So yeah, I am right there. The new parameters of Texas whiskey. That's the article that's in here. So basically, when I got done with the book, I was like, I've never really been a writer. Like a writer tried to make.
You still feel that way after writing 2 books?
Yeah. Kinda. No, it's funny. Okay.
That really makes me not a writer then.
Well, so okay. So I'd never really done it.
Yeah.
But I was like, I am sitting here literally until this book comes out. I know more about Texas whiskey than anybody just because I'm the only one who's talked to everybody.
Right. The textbook is coming out. Everybody's waiting on it. Right.
Once it comes out, then like by no means
then
do
you know
I know
what I know. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's official. Here you go. But I'm sitting here with all of this whiskey knowledge and my obsessive love for Texas whiskey. And I'm like, what can I you know what? I'm just going to pop off some random emails to some random magazines and see if I can write some random articles about Texas whiskey.
That's awesome.
And the first one that got back to me was Whiskey Advocate.
Okay.
I love Whiskey Advocate. It's a very, very good magazine. They said, yes, we would like you to write an article about Texas whiskey. And so I wrote them an article about Texas whiskey. And they said, that is not what we were looking for. And I said, okay, here, tweak, here. And they're like, no, we will pay your kill fee. I'm like, you're okay. First of all, I had no idea. They paid me so that they could void the contract that I had with them for this article.
Did they tell you what they wanted beforehand?
No. I mean, they told me what they wanted, but I don't know. I think it was genuinely, I think it was my tone, like totally my tone.
Gotcha.
I think that I have a very specific writing style. It's what's coming out of my mouth.
Right.
The way that I speak is the way that I write. And if, it's not academic. I hey dude all the time. I like to cuss, I don't think I cussed in the Whiskey Advocate article.
But you're a passionate dude you're very proud about Texas whiskey. And it's like having like when I read your stuff, it's like having a conversation with your buddy.
So there were parameters in the article that I did not give them what they were looking for, and they paid me a kill fee. And I was kind of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't write. This was a bad idea.
Money that kills your ego is kind of a weird, funny thing. Here's some money to go away.
Can you just never bother us again? I'm like, I will never bother you again. Yeah, totally. I'm never going to bother you again. And then I got an email from American Whiskey, and basically Phoebe, my editor, she goes, I love these pitches. This sounds really good. Shot in the dark. Could you do one of them by Thursday? This was like 2 months ago.
Okay.
And I'm like, it was Monday. I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. Whatever.
Just give them the same article
Absolutely.
you already wrote.
I did some tweaking.
Okay.
But yeah, so she liked one of the pitches that I gave her and gave it to her. And then I didn't hear back. Didn't hear back for like a month. And then...
So this whole I want to be a writer thing, you're like, maybe I should just rethink all of this.
This was dumb. This was silly. I'll just stick to writing books. At least then they can't tell me no.
Right.
So I get this email from Phoebe like a month later, and she's like, so yeah, I would love for you to continue with this series. I would like for you to do 4 articles in all of our releases this year. And I'm like, awesome. What happened with the first one? Is that in a magazine somewhere? And then it came out, and I was like, I didn't know it was coming out.
You found out that you were in a magazine when you saw a magazine.
I literally got a call from a distiller who shall be named later, and he was like, "Hey man, listen, really great article. Spencer's not the executive director of the Texas Whiskey Association, and so the next time," I'm like, "Whoa!"
Oh, right.
Totally. He was 2 months ago when I wrote the article.
I wrote this,
but
right?
No, with you totally. Do you have the magazine? And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, can you take a picture or something? I guess I can go look it up, but I don't remember what I wrote.
That's like, you know what that reminds me of? It's like an athlete finding out he was traded on Twitter or something, right? Like their agent didn't tell them. Like somebody in their family's like, Lil, I saw on Twitter that you got released. And
hey,
like, oh, okay.
Congratulations on your new job. What
job?
What did I get fired from my old job? What happened?
So number one, congratulations. And I love the fact that it came after kind of a no and like a bad thing. Not a bad thing. It's a learning opportunity, I guess.
That was the moment that I knew for a fact that the Whiskey Advocate thing was because of my tone.
Gotcha.
Because Phoebe loved it. Like she literally didn't change anything in my article, and I'm writing 3 more for her.
Yeah.
But Whiskey Advocate, I don't have the right tone for Whiskey Advocate at all.
Well, but what I also love about that is that, you got to, we learn who our audience is, and it's okay if we're not everybody's cup of tea, and so I think it's one of the cool things about this show is maybe the way we handle this, other people that watch different whiskey shows that maybe a little more pretentious or a little more, whatever. Yeah. But everybody's going to find their flavor. And so I just want to say kudos to you for just continue to lean into who you are and not trying to change. And it works out, right? You find somebody that that may not be your cup of tea here, but somebody else is like, hey, don't change anything. I think a lot of times we try to edit ourselves to fit in everybody else's box. So
big time.
not to make this a big personal development show as well, but yeah.
The best part about it is the fact that I have 4 articles in American Whiskey Magazine where I get to champion Texas whiskey.
That's great.
Which is all I'm looking to do right now.
It's fantastic. Yeah, so like I have the printed out version here as I was reading and taking notes, and it was very interesting. So we've already established the fact that, you know, Nico just talks like your buddy, and he cusses some, and he kind of uses regular, you know, everyday language.
Vernacular.
However, in the
vernacular, there's a word for it.
Speaking of big words, vernacular. In the first, we're going to get to the content here, but for just a second, I need to do an editorial piece here. In the first paragraph of this article, it is not Nico's word. There's a quote from Jared Hempstead, who is the head distillers at Balcones in Waco. We've talked about before. They're represented here in front of us. I had to look up a word. I had to look up a word on how to pronounce it. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick this up in the mic. We'll find out this. I didn't know how to pronounce this word. Anthropomorphize. One more time. Anthropomorphize. Now I know how to pronounce anthropomorphize.
Would you like to give us the definition, Jimmy?
First I'm going to give it to you in a sentence. I feel like we're at a spelling bee. Can I get that in a sentence? Good old Jared, who talks just like your buddy as well, says, we're going to spend the next 20 to 30 years figuring this out. I don't want to anthropomorphize the weather, but what kind of whiskey does this region want to make itself? Basically, the word means to attribute human characteristics or behavior to something that's not, right? So I want you, for the audience, before they jump in and go, Nico, you told me your stuff was really easy to read. How do you interpret that sentence in that quote?
I mean,
it's about the weather.
It's about the weather. It's you don't. I think what he just meant was he meant overcomplicate it, or like just take it to a degree that it's the character in Texas whiskey that is the lead of the story.
Right.
Like you don't need to. The weather is absolutely important in the state. It's not everything.
Yeah. Well, but it goes on right there to talk about how here in Texas, we get in different regions, and we'll get into that here in just a second, and what makes everything so diverse and why we can have so many different types of whiskey like you see here in front of us, is that there are places here in Texas where it gets below 0 at certain times of the year, and it gets as high as 120. And so it's going to vary. So again, when you say, oh, I like Texas whiskey, we're going to have to start getting way more specific and not trying to be one thing across the state. In fact, right here in the article, you talk about, depending on the map, there are between 8 and 12 distinct climate zones in Texas. And you kind of compare this to Scotch. And so what I want to hear first is, you said Scotch has already taught the world about how climate changes greatly impact whiskey. Talk a little bit just about that. So for someone like myself that doesn't drink a whole lot of Scotch, or the Scotch drinkers out there, I'm assuming inside different regions, you're going to get a vastly different experience in Scotch.
Oh, big time, okay. big time. Yeah, if you're into like the peaty, the heavy, overbearing grandfather's Scotch, you're going to drink from Islay. If you want something a little more subdued, it's going to be Campbelltown or Highlands, that kind of thing. So,
well, then you go on to, so you have this huge variation inside of Scotland.
Yes, there's
Scotch. And then you said there are 9. There are 9 Scotlands inside of Texas. So take that diversity of climates and continue to expand it. But I think that's a great way, specifically for people that aren't familiar with Texas whiskey. And maybe they have an experience with one they either love and then they expect all of it to taste that way. Or let's say they try something that isn't really their bag. And again, not labeling with all Texas whiskey is this, is you can talk to somebody that's not from this region and compare it to, hey, are you a Scotch drinker as well? I think that's a great analogy to kind of open people's mind that the first Texas whiskey they taste isn't the only experience they're going to have.
It always, every drop of whiskey in this country is going to come back to Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah.
And
comparison-wise, you mean?
Just in general.
Sure.
And so in Kentucky is Kentucky does not have the climate regions that Texas does.
Right.
And so when you have Kentucky bourbon, there are going to be inherent similarities between kind of all of them.
Sure.
They're all going to taste like Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah.
The entire point of this article was to talk about the diversity of the spirits that are being made in Texas. And so coming at it from the perspective of this, like it dawned on me. We went up to took the kiddos up to Colorado during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was we drove to Colorado to stay at a friend's house.
Yeah.
So very pandemic safe. And so driving up there, excuse me, we stopped in Paladuro Canyon. And in Paladuro Canyon, it is just outside of Amarillo. In the canyon,
spent a lot of time there as a kid. That's where my dad's from, so I know exactly. Yeah.
So in the canyon that day, we went down, and in the canyon that day, it was 105 degrees in the canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're leaving the canyon, all I kept thinking was, I know that as a kid or whatever, I've seen the weather map with like -10,
mm-hmm.
-15. I feel like I've seen Amarillo at -15 degrees.
Absolutely. And a lot of snow.
So there is 120-degree weather swing in that one
in the
spot?
same spot, right? Not in a different region of Texas. Yeah.
The Texas the size of Spain. In one place in Texas, it is literally going to swing 120 degrees within a year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Good God. Not to anthropomorphize the weather, but it is a major factor. It is not the only factor.
No, and so that leads me to the next thing that I underlined here was you were talking Stuart Brown, who's the head distiller at Whitmeyer's Distilling, and that's near Houston, right? Outside of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about
Dag nabbit, I meant to grab one. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Okay.
But he talks about how because of their climate and some of the heat is they actually proof down instead of up.
They have. He said they've had years. They've had chunks of time
that means instead of the alcohol content going up, it went down
instead of the water evaporating. The alcohol did.
Gotcha. Wow.
And because it was so humid, and
Holy smokes.
literally they threw something in at 110 proof, and then when they came back, it's at 108 proof, and they're just like, great, okay, cool.
Nice.
But it's just another variable that they have to deal with, which isn't a variable that Kentucky has ever had to deal with.
Right.
So inherently, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you continue to go on about the types, and it's something, if you watch the show for a while, and I really encourage you to watch other episodes, is what we keep coming back to is how diverse this is, right? All the different types. And right here, you really talk about that it's not just bourbon and single malts, but there's wheat whiskeys like we poured earlier, finished whiskeys, smoked single malts, that there's rice, heirloom corn, malt blends, bourbon blends, whiskey finished in traditional casks, like sherry barrels or port. Others are finished in beer barrels, cider barrels. The other day we were talking about...
Actually, I have both of those. This is a Balcones Grand Cru. This was finished in St. Arnold barrels.
And what, St. Arnold?
St. Arnold's a beer out of Houston.
Okay. So that's a Balcones finished in beer barrels.
This is a Ranger Creek Texas rye that was done as a collaboration with the Texas Whiskey Festival. This is Ranger Creek rye that was finished in an Austin East Ciders barrel.
Oh, the cider? Mm-hmm. I think I'll try. I'm a big Austin East Ciders fan. So
there you go.
Absolutely.
The other one that I mentioned in there that I got a little bit into was Blackland
Distilling. Yeah.
So Blackland is out of Fort Worth. One of the cool things about Blackland, one of the most interesting things about Blackland is their use of grain. They use triticale, which is a combination of wheat and, oh my gosh, barley? I forget.
Oh, you talk about that.
Yeah,
that was actually the next place I was going to because I had it on here to ask you about. So it's called triticale?
Triticale, yes.
Triticale, yeah. It actually was here that you...
So I know.
Oh yeah, because we talk about in Blackland right here.
Yep.
Talks about their eye still.
Yes, that's the other thing. So they make, I call them robot whiskey. I don't know if they like me calling them robot whiskey, but I call them robot whiskey because they're running on an eye still. And so what an eye still is, somebody threw technology at the whole distilling thing. Okay. So instead of the master distiller kind of making sure that everything's right, and you've got we're gonna pull these heads out, and when I think the time's right, it's like, nah, dude, you throw some science at it and be like, once it hits 17.432, pull it, and like the still does everything. The numbers. Yes, gotcha. It is. It's very little waste. Like it's truly a fantastic way to make spirits. Yes, this is Blackland.
Is that all? Is across the board they do it that way?
Everything that they're distilling is coming out of their eye still. Gotcha. So yeah, they're doing a little bit of sourcing, but they're getting to the point that they are going to be producing everything that they're putting out on market. And just
going back where that triticale, am I pronouncing that? Wheat and rye.
Yeah,
hybrid.
Wheat and rye.
Yeah.
Yes. Barley.
No. And so it said that they're currently making 100% triticale whiskey, as well as using it in its bourbon and rye bottlings.
Yes.
And it'll be the first triticale whiskey in Texas. Currently, the only other U.S. distiller working is Dry Fly in Washington. Is the only other person the only other distillery that's doing triticale.
Which I totally found out was wrong.
Oh.
But hey, that's the world of whiskey, which
is always moving.
Which is fantastic.
Yes.
Unfortunately for me, it's wrong about a Texas distiller. So
is there somebody else in the state doing it?
Bent out of Louisville.
Okay, I have a bottle of Bent at home.
They're using triticale in their I think it's the rye that they have coming out.
And that's a wheat and rye hybrid. Very interesting.
Yeah. Which it makes a lot of sense to kind of, it gives you a way to kind of get the softness of a wheat into the spiciness of a rye without having to, I don't know, mess with two different ones.
The other kind of fun things I saw in here, we go back to balconies a lot, and some amazing people. We have I brought the Dusk. Is that what I had? Yeah.
Yes.
Which is right there, which is a finished whiskey. I have the Dusk, you have the Dawn, or somehow we bought it and then split it. But they were talking about, there was one that had like a Dr. Pepper flavor profile, which I loved because Dr. Pepper was like, it literally was created in that region down there. And I was like, what a cool way to like, and we've seen stuff before. They've done stuff with Shinerbach. Like they have these nods to different things that are from Texas that they're incorporating in their whiskey, which I think is fantastic.
So that was a barrel. Independent Stave, like their barrel guy, at some point told Jared, he was like, "Hey man, I'm thinking about making a barrel that's kind of got notes of Dr. Pepper," and he's like, "Well," and he's like, "Yeah, obviously for y'all, I'm just letting you know that I'm gonna try to see if this. I don't know if I have no idea if it wound up working. Yeah, but like, dude,
and that's the other thing is, Again, coming back to the diversity, it's willing to experiment. And we've talked about this over and over again. And as you go and listen to other episodes, maybe this is your first time meeting us, and thank you so much for popping in, is that we talk about one of the strengths of Texas whiskey is the fact that we're only 14 years old and we can play around with stuff. So it's not like we're messing with some 100-year-old tradition. It's like, cool, there's some things we already know we do really well. Well, let's play with this. And it doesn't always have to work.
Right.
Right. There were some mixed reviews on some of that Shiner Bock one that we had at the Texas Whiskey Festival, right?
Yeah.
But I love the attempt because you think of Texas and think Texas beer, like Shiner, it's somewhere really close to the top of that list. Mm-hmm. And so just the Dr. Pepper thing, like, cool.
Yeah.
Let's try it. And
the St. Arnold collaboration.
Yeah. And you don't know when you're gonna like stumble upon the next thing that's just genius. You're gonna have your misses too. But you have to be willing to experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. And just when you take a big old step back and you look at the Texas whiskey scene as a whole, I think Jared's right. Like I think we are kind of figuring out what this region's going to be the best at right now. I think that.
And when you say this region, do you mean the state or each specific region?
Honestly, it's going to be each specific region.
Because eventually it would be like, cool, North Texas is known for this, West Texas is this. Yeah. If you're down at the Gulf, look for it's like,
they're all going to be kind of inherently different. I mean, it's if you think about Argentinian wine. Mm-hmm. How about that?
Sure.
Argentina makes kick-ass Malbec. Yeah. Everybody knows that. If you know anything about wine, Argentina makes Malbec. They make fantastic cab. They make pretty good Zen. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that they make, but they make Malbec.
Gotcha.
I think that's the thing that's going to end up happening to Texas whiskey in 10 years.
Yeah.
It'll be like, yeah, man, Garrison Brothers is a really good bourbon, but, Texas, they make single malt. Or they make bourbon.
You hear about something like weed being a gateway drug, but you hear, and so I'm going somewhere with this, I swear. And so, like in marketing,
it's not legal here, Jimmy.
Yet, right? I know we're in Texas. I'm not, and maybe there's weed whiskey coming. But where I was going with this,
practically a certainty.
I know
my
the
friend.
CBD whiskey.
Yeah.
Where I was going to go with this is a lot of times in marketing, you hear a lot of times you need to be known for one thing, and then when someone passes that gateway, that barrier with you. Mm-hmm. Then you can show them all your other offers. And so you're right. One of these things is everybody continues to produce is going to kind of rise to the top to be like, cool. Most people, when they think Texas whiskey, think blank. And but I feel like that's still to be determined. I mean, if that was the case right now, do you feel like there's somebody in that spot right now, or there's a type, and maybe it's not a distillery, maybe it's just a type?
No, because the distilleries that keep our most lauded distilleries all make very different things.
Yeah.
So Iron Root, the climate in Denison is closer to Kentucky than anywhere else in Texas. They make a very kick-ass bourbon.
Yeah.
But they make great single malt, which isn't out yet. They make a great Irish style, which isn't out yet. Like they just make good whiskey.
And so the fact that they got voted, that's really interesting because that's the first time I've heard you say that. And so because they won best bourbon in the world, do you feel it's because the bourbon, it was closer to what people expect from Kentucky?
No.
Okay, cool.
No.
I'd never really thought about that before. If you're like, oh, that climate's,
but it is easier to deal with.
Yeah,
because you look at folks like Garrison Brothers and Treaty Oak, and the climate of the Texas Hill Country is so different than the climate of basically Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just a whole other set of parameters that these distillers are trying to figure out. And, a lot of what's happening right now is they're kind of seeing which whiskeys are the ones that are kind of playing with the way that they most want to solve that problem. Yeah. And so, you've got, and then, you've got folks like Ty, who he hates bourbon. He's only going to make single malt. And
Ty, our friend from Andalusia.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I'm having his bottled in bond right now.
Hey, that's my bottle. I always bring two. Nico brings all the other bottles.
I might have another after this because I really like this whiskey and I'm out.
Somewhere along the way, we're going to have like an Oprah after the show if these continue. And those are, I think that people have to subscribe and pay for those. And as we continue to finish everything off.
That's going to be a terrible mom game if we're like rowdy in the background.
Oh, it's sorry, ladies. If our after show leads into that,
it could be the greatest collaboration
show
ever.
Again, it's like Texas whiskey. You never know what genius you're going to stumble upon unless you're willing to experiment. Yeah. Speaking of, here's a segue. When I think Texas, I think barbecue, and I got to the point here of several distilleries in Texas. Man, that was the greatest segue ever, right?
Dude, all I could think of is if for some reason I had this image of you pulling out your phone with the picture of a Segway and just going, Jimmy, what is that? And you're like, it's a Segway.
Ta-da! My segue is to barbecue whiskey.
Yes.
And so you talk about right here. So I want you to kind of go into this, but the first one you give an example is Balcones Brimstone.
Right there.
Which is here?
I believe so. Yes. Cool. Have you ever had it?
No, I have Lineage at home.
Here.
Okay.
You need to try this. Okay. You need to try this live on camera.
So it says
to tape.
It's a scrub oaked smoked corn whiskey. So talk a little bit more about barbecuing whiskey. What you mean by that?
Just kind of the use of smoke in general. The thing that I love the amount of smoke that we're using in Texas. Like we have Ty smokes his own Ty from Andalusia smokes his own peat. He's also got Striker, which is a smoked single malt.
That does smell,
dude.
Yeah,
I know.
If you ever
that's Brimstone.
This took me back to my childhood when you got like the barbecue Lay's chips and that smell when the bag first opens. It has that same.
But when you taste it, it tastes like the barbecue Lay's chip that wound up burnt, but you were at the end of the bag, but you ate it anyway. That's kind of very much the vibe of this thing.
Oh,
Isn't that weird, but
I
amazing?
might have found a new favorite. Holy smokes, that's good.
Yeah, dude, that's Brimstone. So here's the story about Brimstone is that...
And a great name. Oh my gosh, Brimstone. That's awesome.
So I was talking to Alex from Balcones, and he was telling me about... I was like, so tell me about Brimstone. And he's like, man... I can't because I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, no, this happens with everybody. So when we go through our training, we get to the part and then we're working through all of the whiskeys and we come to Brimstone. And at Brimstone, they say, okay, now, if you would like, we will tell you exactly how we make this whiskey. It is 100% proprietary knowledge. It cannot ever get out there. This is not something that we are interested in public consumption. And if you ever tell anyone, we're going to find out and we're probably going to fire you. Would you like to know how it's made? And Alex is like, damn near everybody's like, nope, not interested.
I don't want
care.
that responsibility.
Nope, absolutely not.
After a few pops, I might talk.
Because I work for Balcones and drink whiskey often, and I could totally see myself just be like, you want to know about Brimstone?
Here, you just pull out the piece of paper. Here, you can make it in your bathtub, right? That's super smart of them.
Isn't that cool?
And how to keep their stuff like under wraps. Because like, would you like the responsibility of, we'll let you know. It's like Willy Wonka being like, cool, I can tell you how the chocolate's made, but if it ever gets out, you're banished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. No, it's super cool. But yeah, they were, that's, to me, that's barbecue whiskey. That's barbecue whiskey to me. And then like what Ty's doing with the smoked malt, he's smoking his own malt, he's smoking his own peat, or he's peating. Is
that like what the Striker is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a smoked single malt.
If you're ever in Blanco, Texas, go stop by Andalusia, go to their tasting room, and they make a Striker old fashioned that they have aged there. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And I'm not a huge smoked whiskey guy or smoked flavor in general, but that was one of the best cocktails I had ever had.
Yeah, it's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
There was so Daniel Vaughn is the barbecue editor for the Texas Monthly. He just wrote this article about Tex Malt, and Tex Malt is now smoking their barley and making it available to people. I feel like a lot of it's going to like beer people that are trying to like
brew your own stuff at home.
Yeah, gotcha. that kind of stuff. It's readily, they're a purveyor of smoked malt, and this hadn't happened before. And we kind of got in this little Twitter back and forth, and I'm like, hey man, so Andalusia's been doing this for a while. He's like, but they're not a purveyor. I'm like, okay, man.
Wait, what does that mean?
It just means they have it for sale. So, which is fine, which is fine. Cool. Whatever. Like, you're totally right. I don't think Ty might have sold me some, but probably not. He's not going to sell the real ale down the street, a bunch of his stuff.
Sure.
So, totally get that. It's a great article. Like it just sort of talking about the importance of smoke in the world of whiskey and in the world of brewing. Yeah. Check it out.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Texas Monthly. This whatever month this is. The latest one.
Right. So to just kind of recap here for a minute. So we're talking about Nico's article in the American Whiskey Magazine, which he has there. He can show you one more time. But really, at the end of the day, what it is, it's just a celebration of the diversity. And for those of you that are continuing to, like myself, learn about Texas whiskey, it's the fact that we do so many cool, fun things, And so when you get in those drinking debate conversations with your buddies, they're like, I only drink Kentucky. Awesome, man. I have family in Kentucky. There's a lot of Kentucky whiskey I really like. But what I've been appreciative of this kind of journey is now I can educate some, and so really that's what we're here to talk to you guys about as well. Any final thoughts on what you think about, just where we're going, where we're at, what you're excited about?
There is Texas rye is a weird thing because we don't grow rye very well.
Right. So we talked before, that's usually Canadian, right?
Right.
Sure.
But, the reason that Canada is very good at rye is because that's where the rye comes from. And that makes a lot of sense. The rye doesn't really come from here. There are farmers that are starting to grow it a little bit, and there are people using it. I think the Texas rye category is about to start kind of blowing some people's minds. Yeah. It seems really...
You keep bringing it up. I feel like the last 3 shows, somewhere in the way,
dude,
you get this magical twinkle look in your eye, and you're like, wait for the rye.
Wait for the rye, man. There's some... Still Austin has an incredible rye coming out. The Lone Elm rye that just came out is fantastic.
Is the still rye what what we tried when we stopped by there.
Yes.
Okay, I can vouch for this.
It's unbelievable. There's cool rye coming out of Houston. Like my favorite thing that TX makes right now is their experimental rye. There's just a lot of really interesting rye. Like I think that's going to kind of be another layer onto everything else. Because I mean, as of right now, Texas is kind of known for bourbons of all sorts and single malt.
Yeah.
And I think that people are going to start being like, what the fuck with the rye coming out of Texas? How does that even make sense? But it's really good.
And there's a lot of people that's kind of all they drink is rye. And so that's exciting too. And again, I'm completely biased now because of being a part of this show, because of being friends with this guy here, is when I stop in, like I was at a bar the other day. Where was I? That doesn't matter. But I was at a bar the other day.
I know where you were.
No, I wasn't there because they carry Texas whiskey. And so I stopped. Oh, I know exactly where I was, but no need to mention them here. Here in Dallas, great little spot. Amazing cocktail program. 0 Texas whiskey on their shelves. And I asked, I was like, hey, do you have any? Because sometimes it'll be twofold. Nico, quick little funny story about why I like having Nico on like text to access is I can be at a bar, I can take a picture of what's available. Not like on a list, but like literally take a picture of the bottles and say, hey man, anything here you think I should try? And I was in Miami. I was speaking at a conference doing a workshop. And he mentioned, now at this point, I forget what it is. He mentioned a certain whiskey. I'm like, oh, okay. Put my phone back down and I was like, oh. And so I go look and I look again and I don't see what it is that Nico told me to ask for. And I was like, oh, he must have not seen. And I'm looking and I'm like, no. And so finally I asked the bartender, I'm like, hey, do you have, and I kind of show him the text. And the bartender kind of had a confused look, starts looking. And what happens is it's 3 rows back, and all you could see was like this corner of a top of a bottle. And I was like, that's either, I don't know whether you should be super proud about that or just like, what has my life become? But it's amazing to be like, oh, he could see this part of the top of a whiskey bottle and know what that was. My point is, now when I go into bars, I usually look for something from Texas, and I'll ask whether I'm here in Texas or somewhere else, and just say, just because I want to continue to support, I feel like, you keep saying this is the year. And so I'm like, I want to do my part to let the bars know, hey, this is the year because this is getting ordered as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for people that don't know, we keep referencing the book. Want to remind you can go to texaswhiskeybook.com. Nico's book is coming out very soon. We have a cool super special for the people that are pre-ordering the book. We have a few dates on there, but if you go pre-order Texas Whiskey Book, it's at texaswhiskeybook.com. You can have an opportunity to get it autographed by Dr. Nico Martini, which is pretty awesome. We are going to have a live Zoom Q&A whiskey tasting. There's an opportunity to get a bottle of Grayson, which is a whiskey that Nico helped get created as well. There's so many fun things. So go to texaswhiskeybook.com. Nico, man, you're on a roll, bro. I'm super proud of you.
Yeah, man.
This show has been a blast. I'm so thankful for everybody here that watching. So
we still got a lot to say, my friend.
We're just getting rolling.
We are just scratching the surface.
Hey,
of Texas
speaking
whiskey.
of, we would love to hear from you guys. So if you have questions, things that you would like us to cover, he is Texas Whiskey Book on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Send a DM. I'm the Coach Jimmy on Instagram. Man, hit us up. Let us know that you're watching the show. We'd love to connect with the audience and just learn more about what you guys want to hear from us as well, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. This has been another episode of Texas Whiskey. Until next time. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers, y'all.